Over the last week, there have been some horrifying updates coming out of one of the most notorious cases in Delphi, Indiana. There are allegations of cult and satanic rituals. There are some horrific details that have shed new lights on two absolutely heinous murders, and there is a lot to unpack here, guys. Now, if you haven't guessed by now, this is the case of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. The state has also now responded to the defense's allegations that these murders were in fact done at the hands of cult members rather than Richard Allen. They've responded not only to the defense's allegations about these murders, but also to their request about wanting cameras in the courtroom. So in this episode, we're going to go over all of it, both sides of information, all of the details, what both the defense and the state are saying, and then you can make up your mind for yourself on what you believe to be true. There has been so many new updates, and it is quite honestly one of the most discussed unsolved mysteries out there at all, and people are just gripped by this case. And these new details not only blew my mind when I was reading them, I know it's shocked everybody now that it has been made public, but it really got me thinking about a lot of different aspects in this case. So I'm going to break everything down for you guys. As a reminder, I previously did do a deep dive on this case, so I will put the links to those videos in the description if you want to get fully caught up if you're not familiar with this case, but we are going to go into all of the new breaking details. Hey guys, I'm Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. Jackpot World is a fun, free-to-play slots game that brings you the authentic and satisfying casino slots experience. With endless free coins and bonuses, you're snagging free coins every 15 minutes using over a dozen super fun methods, and you can hardly ever run out of coins. It's available on Android, iOS, and even Windows devices, so you can play anywhere and anytime. Now get this, new players will get 6 million free coins right after downloading, and if you use your exclusive gift code Annie, you can claim an extra $100 worth of coins. You simply click on the avatar in the upper left-hand corner, tap gift code, then enter Annie, click OK, and you are all set with your bonus coins. You can hit the big jackpot so easily with extremely high payouts, so whether you're a fan of the classic Vegas style slots or you prefer the latest and greatest slots games, this app has it all. More than 200 slot themes to choose from, and new slots are released every single week. There's stunning graphics, immersive sound effects, and thrilling bonus features. Now here's another little fun fact. Players spin over 200 million times daily on Jackpot World. Now, let me talk to you about these slots for a second, because Wicked Fortune is a popular slot theme with just classic gameplay and the high odds of hitting the jackpot, while Tale of Mermaid is a little bit for more experienced players. It has numerous diverse gameplays for you to explore, all while this fun, cute little mermaid is singing in the background. Now for me, I love Piggy Bingo. I don't know why, there's just something about like this pig and the jackpots, but I don't know, it's my favorite one to play. Jackpot World is way beyond an average slots game. Within this single app, you can effortlessly discover game types that you love or are even familiar with, like bingo, Monopoly, stamps collecting, pet feeding, puzzle games, snakes and ladders, I mean, you name it. Also, if you're up for some multiplayer action, they have that too. So get this, Jackpot World is now celebrating its 5th anniversary. And guess what? So many players have scored a 4-day, 3-night trip to Las Vegas worth $6,500. They just downloaded the game and joined the daily live streams. I got so many goodies, but I absolutely love the refrigerator magnet beer opener, and of course I love the tote because it can carry all my goodies inside of it. And you can participate too in the live streaming within the game, or easily keep up by following them on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch to watch. Again, download this now to get 6 million free coins and use your exclusive gift code Annie to claim an extra $100 worth of coins. The case of Abigail Williams and Liberty German has been one of the most discussed unsolved mysteries in recent history. Despite extensive analysis of the infamous Bridge Guy video, the suspect sketches, and that chilling phrase, "down the hill," there has yet to be a conviction. Investigators have kept many details under wraps, leading to speculation and rumors, including the possibility of a cult connection. However, when suspect Richard Allen was arrested in October of 2022, there was a sense of relief as investigators seemed confident that he was the killer. However, recently, documents from Richard's defense have disrupted everything that we thought we knew about this case. These documents suggest that there is evidence indicating Richard's potential innocence, and has even reignited beliefs surrounding possible cult involvement. In addition, they expose previously undisclosed details about the crime scene and the causes of death, which chillingly resemble a scene from a horror movie. So in today's episode, we are diving into all of those latest updates on the Delphi murders, and we are going to discuss what they could mean for this case going forward. Now, I'm sure if you are watching this video, you're already familiar with the horrific murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German out of Delphi, Indiana. If you're not, on February 13th, 2017, 13-year-old Abby and her best friend, 14-year-old Libby, set out on an afternoon hike along the Delphi historic trails. They were dropped off by Libby's older sister, and they were supposed to be picked up later by her dad. Tragically, the girls never made it off the trails, which set off a frantic search by family members and law enforcement. The following day, on February 14th, the girls' bodies were found in a wooded area near that trail. The details of the murders were not initially released, as I mentioned, but the case quickly garnered national attention, with law enforcement agencies from several different jurisdictions joining to help solve this horrific crime. One of the most crucial and infamous pieces of evidence came from Libby's cell phone, after she very quickly managed to capture video and audio of the man believed to be their killer, as the two girls were walking on the Monon High Bridge. The grainy image and chilling audio clip of a male voice could be heard saying, "Down the hill," directing the girls to do this.
Guys, down the hill.
And that clip was released to the public in hopes of generating leads. There was also a portion of the audio where it sounds like one of the girls was mentioning a gun. Despite thousands of tips pouring in and extensive analysis of the evidence, the killer's identity remained a mystery for years.
During the course of this investigation, we have concluded the first sketch released will become secondary as of today. The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch, which you will see shortly, is the person responsible for the murders of these two little girls. We also believe this person is from Delphi, currently or has previously lived here, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here. We believe this person is currently between the age range of 18 and 40, but might appear younger than his true age. Directly to the killer, who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight. For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you, and you want to know what we know. And one day, you will. A question to you. What will those closest to you think of? They find out that you brutally murdered two little girls. 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing.
There have been numerous different persons of interest, with some more heavily discussed online than others. People interested in the case would compare these individuals of the 2 vastly different sketches that were released to the public as well. Then, after years of essentially no new information, The case seemed to ramp up again after a new person of interest entered the public eye. 29-year-old Keegan Klein was an internet catfish that would use various fake accounts to chat with underage girls. It was also discovered that he was actually chatting with Libby the day of the murders, and had even told another girl that he was supposed to meet up with Libby that very day. Keegan was later arrested and charged with possessing child material and given 43 years in prison. But since then, he has been ruled out as a suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. Many people believed that the fact that an online predator just happened to be the last person to speak with Libby before the murders was too coincidental. Some thought that even if Keegan didn't commit the crimes himself, that he was somehow connected to the real killer. However, that theory died down after a different suspect was finally arrested and charged with the murders. 50-year-old CVS worker Richard Allen was arrested 5 years after the murders of Abby and Libby. He was arrested on October 26, 2022. In December, a redacted version of the probable cause affidavit was released, and prosecutors provided evidence linking Richard to the case. The document stated that Richard put himself on the trails that day, and they also connected an unspent bullet discovered near the girls' bodies to a gun that he owned. They also stated there were witnesses claiming to see someone on the trail that resembled Richard. However, the witnesses described him as being in different clothing than what we have seen the Bridge Guy video to be wearing. But then there was another witness who claimed to have seen a man walking down the road in muddy and bloody clothing, 2 hours after when the murders would have occurred.
Police in Delphi, Indiana say the families of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German are one step closer to justice tonight. Today, officials confirm that 50-year-old Richard Allen has been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. The 2 teenage girls disappeared during a hiking trip in Delphi, their hometown, back in 2017. Now, police say Allen also called Delphi his home, lending credence to the thought that the girl's alleged killer was hiding in plain sight. Also today, Libby German's grandmother, Becky Patty, said that Allen once processed film for her family at a local CVS store and did not charge the loved one who picked the photographs up. Now, Patty didn't elaborate on that chilling encounter, but she did describe how she feels now that a suspect is finally in police custody.
I don't feel like I thought I would. I've always said that I would be screaming on the rooftops, but we're not. It's sad. While there's somebody that's been arrested, there is, our lives for 5.5 years have been in a search mode.
And you can almost hear how exhausted Libby German's grandmother feels, and that exhaustion makes sense considering all that she and everyone in the small city of Delphi have gone through for so many years.
In December, Richard's defense issued a press release to inform the public of several things about their client and the investigation. The press release stated, "Rick is a 50-year-old man who has never been arrested nor accused of any crime in his entire life. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes. The police did not contact Rick after Libby German and Abby Williams went missing. Rather, Rick contacted the police and voluntarily discussed being on the trail that day. Like many people in Delphi, Rick wanted to help any way he could. Rick contacted the police to let them know that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. Without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local grocery store to offer up details of his trip to the trail on the day in question. Rick tried to assist with the investigation and told the police that he did recall seeing 3 younger girls on the trail that day. His contact with the girls was brief and of less significance. Rick does not recall if this interaction with the conservation officer was tape recorded, but believes that the officer scribbled notes on a notepad as Rick spoke to him. After Rick shared his information with law enforcement officials, he went back to his job at the local CVS and didn't hear from the police for more than 5 years. The next time that Rick heard from the police was in October of 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election and within days of a federal lawsuit filed against the Carroll County Sheriff's Office by its former second-in-command, Michael Thomas. In the lawsuit, Thomas claims that he had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation. but those suggestions and offers were rejected by the sheriff. Thomas further claimed that the sheriff and others in the department feared the disagreements with Thomas would become publicized as a result of the political campaign for sheriff. Thomas claims in the suit that he was ultimately demoted and replaced by Tony Liggett, who later that year won the 2022 election for sheriff. Furthermore, Thomas claims that he was also removed from high-profile cases. Rick was ultimately arrested on October 28, 2022. In the 5+ years since Rick volunteered to provide information to the police, Rick did not get rid of his vehicle or his guns and did not throw out any clothing. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine. The probable cause affidavit seems to suggest that a single magic bullet is proof of Rick's guilt. It is a bit premature to engage in any detailed discussions regarding the veracity of this evidence until more discovery is received, but it is safe to say that the discipline of tool mark identification, or ballistics, is anything but a science. The entire discipline has been under attack in courtrooms across this country as being unreliable and lacking any scientific validity. We anticipate a vigorous legal and factual challenge to any claims by the prosecution as to the reliability of its conclusions concerning the single magic bullet. On Rick's behalf, we argued to have the openable cause affidavit unsealed. Rick has nothing to hide. Although it is the burden of the prosecutor to prove Rick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense team looks forward to conducting its own investigation concerning Rick's innocence. The prosecutor mentioned at the last hearing his belief that others may have been involved in the killing, yet there was no mention in the probable cause affidavit about a second suspect involved in the killing. The defense is confused by such discrepancies in this investigation and will be in a better position to respond as more discovery is received. Rick Allen owned a Ford Focus in February of 2017. His Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of the PT Cruiser or Smart Car that was described by the witnesses. It seems that the CCSD is trying to bend facts to fit their narrative. Moving forward, it is our intent to scrutinize the discovery as it is received and to give the necessary attention to the volumes of tips that we are receiving. To the extent we continue to discover information that points to Rick's innocence, we will offer up this information to the public, so long as we are not prohibited from doing so as a result of the recent request by the prosecutor for a gag order or by the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct. So in June of 2023, more documents were released that dropped an even bigger bombshell against Richard Allen. According to the documents, Richard confessed to the murders multiple times while on the phone to his wife Kathy, and even to his mother. Each time he confessed, Kathy would quickly hang up the phone. Then after these confessions, Richard's mental state drastically changed, and he began losing a significant amount of weight, also refusing to eat or sleep. He broke his tablet, which was his connection to the outside world, and he was even doing bizarre things like eating documents from his attorneys. His defense team quickly filed a request to have him moved to another facility due to his declining mental health, and also stated that the confessions were due to mental duress of being in confinement for his protection. However, the request was denied after the judge stated that Richard was being treated more favorably than other inmates housed at the same facility. And there was a lot more that went into this filing because they outlined that in reality, Richard was not being treated more favorably than anyone else, and completely alternatively to that, he was actually being treated horribly. I will link the deep dive to all of that in the description, but there is so much more that goes into that. I just wanted to come on here and talk about updates, so I'm not going to really dive into that in a deep way, but you can definitely catch up on that. So then on September 13th, Richard Allen's defense filed another motion, this one to authorize the public broadcasting of future proceedings in the courtroom. The attorneys wrote, and I quote, "The public's thirst for information in this case offers up an opportunity for transparency and the education of the public in terms of the day-to-day operations of courtrooms across the state." Now, this motion came as a surprise, as most of the evidence has been withheld from the public up until this point, and due to the gag order issued by the judge. They also have issued a request to have certain pieces of evidence suppressed, claiming that the evidence was seized during a search warrant that had false and misleading information. This evidence includes the guns that investigators believe the bullet found at the scene came from, as well as several knives, too.
With IT made into extraordinary requests in the Delphi murder case.
Accused killer Richard Allen wants a judge to allow cameras in the courtroom for the trial and to throw out some evidence against him. IT made senior investigative reporter Richard Essex has the details.
Richard Allen's lawyers filed 2 requests on Wednesday. One of the requests calls for allowing cameras in the courtroom to stream and televise all of the proceedings, including a trial for 2 counts of murder. So far, these are the only views we've had of Richard Allen at court, a defendant shackled, walking in and out of the Carroll County Courthouse. Allen's attorneys want Judge Francis Gold to change that and allow cameras in the courtroom at each turn in his case. The motion filed Wednesday cites national and even global attention on the 2017 murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi and pushes the judge for transparency in his case. His attorneys argue, throughout the investigation in this case, law enforcement authorities routinely sought out the help of the public through press conferences. Allowing the public to observe the proceedings to their finality will build the trust of the public moving forward. They also cite Judge Francis Gold's role in a pilot program that led Indiana to approve cameras in state courtrooms for the first time ever, beginning in May of this year. Gold has rejected previous requests from the media, including Wish TV, for cameras in Allen's case, and has issued a gag order in this case.
However, it was a 136-page memo filed by Richard's defense team this past week that has now completely blown up online and has caused many people to completely change their minds about what is actually going on with this case. While there were still some people who believed that Richard Allen was innocent, most people were leaning toward him being the killer due to the confidence of law enforcement and what also seemed like a solid investigation. Plus, taking into account that he actually confessed to his wife and mother on several occasions. However, if true, the information in these documents point the finger in a completely different direction, which just so happened to be pointing the finger back toward a cult being responsible. There have been so many twists and turns, suspects, rumors, allegations, speculation, so much surrounding this case. It's honestly been hard to keep up with sometimes. Finally, having a suspect in custody put many people's minds at ease that the perpetrator of this horrific crime was off the streets and that the town of Delphi was now a little safer. While the cult rumors seemed really unlikely and, quite honestly, a little silly in the beginning, with all of that information laid out in these documents, that theory doesn't seem so far-fetched after all. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously it's the job of the defense to cast doubt on the prosecution's theory, and that's exactly what these documents have done. However, it's important to remember that this information is being written with the bias of trying to prove Richard Allen's innocence. Just like the documents from the prosecution were believable and understandable, both sides have information leaning toward innocence and guilt. Obviously, if the prosecution had no evidence at all, there wouldn't have been an arrest. But these documents are requesting a Franks hearing, which is to determine if a police officer involved lied in order to obtain a search warrant. According to the defense, that's exactly what happened. Like I mentioned, the document is 136 pages long. It's been posted online, and there are channels where they have read every single page word for word. However, in this video, I'm going to try to give you the most important aspects of the documents. There have also been several new names introduced as potential persons of interest, but I'm going to just give initials for their privacy at this point. None of the people in the documents have been named as formal suspects, and since the allegations are so heinous and serious, I think for now it's best to leave the names out. So according to an FBI agent in 2017, the bodies of the girls found at the crime scene seemed to have been moved, manipulated, and strategically placed, otherwise known as staged. Rumors from an alleged witness at the scene stated that there were sticks arranged on the girls' bodies, which sparked the initial speculation of a cult's involvement from the very beginning. And the new documents state that there was actually evidence discovered at the crime scene that indicates cult involvement, consisting of symbols resembling runes made out of sticks and constructed with tree branches. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what runes are, it's almost as though it's a type of alphabet system that dates back years, centuries. I mean, it's kind of like very, very old school. And it consists of different letters, different symbols, all sorts of different things. So the defense is arguing that these symbols were clear signatures left behind by individuals in a cult called Odinism. The defense believes that detectives had previously acquired information linking two groups of Odianites to the murders, one group located in or near Delphi, and the other residing in the city of Rushville. They claimed that the prosecution had withheld a letter from a former investigator who believed that there was a potential connection between the killings and the Odianist group in Rushville, which outweighed the evidence against Richard Allen. They accused both prosecutors and several law enforcement officers of concealing information regarding the Odianist ties to the murders. The documents also describe the crime scene, which up until now has been a mystery to the public, left open for speculation. There have been a lot of different things over the years on Reddit. There have been a lot of rumors swirling around, but it's now outlined, and the description is honestly so disturbing that many people online have stated that it has given them nightmares. And for me, personally speaking, it definitely did, especially as a mother. It is horrifying, and it kind of has flipped my entire perspective about this case. I think all of us assumed that this crime scene was horrific and knew that going into it. But I don't think anyone would have been able to imagine just how heinous it actually was based on the description. According to the document, Libby was found at the base of a tree, with 4 branches intentionally placed in a very specific and arranged pattern on her body. Libby was positioned flat on her back, nude, with her left arm stretched above her head, touching the base of the tree. Libby's hands were covered in blood. Blood spots and blood drippings were seen all over Libby's body, from head to toe. Libby's right arm was placed along the side of her body. One large tree branch had been placed over her left shoulder. This branch was so long that it extended above Libby's head several feet and below her legs for several feet as well. 2 smaller branches formed a V, where her legs joined her body near her pelvic region, with both sides of the V extending upward toward Libby's head. The last of the 4 branches extended across Libby's body in a line from her right shoulder to her left shoulder. This 4th tree branch also connected with the other 3 branches and was placed under both branches that formed the V. Libby's neck was partially covered by this 4th branch. There appeared to be no blood spraying or dripping onto the leaves or the tree near Libby's head or near her sliced neck, making it likely that Libby had been killed at a nearby tree and then dragged to her final resting place where she was staged. The murderers treated Abby very differently, though. She was found just a few feet away from Libby, placed at an angle with her legs a few feet from Libby's legs. Now, unlike Libby, Abby was fully clothed. In fact, Abby was dressed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans. No blood appeared on Abby's clothing either, meaning that she was likely murdered while naked, and then dressed by the murderers after she died, and after the blood had stopped coming out of her neck. Abby's hands and feet also had no blood on them. Other than the blood found around Abby's neck area where the murderers would have inflicted the fatal wound, very little, if any, blood was found anywhere else on Abby's body or clothing. The murderers appeared to have gone to great lengths to keep Abby's body and clothing clean from blood. Abby was found on her back. However, her elbows were bent, with her right and left arms both placed on her chest. Abby's left hand and arm near the left side of her face, and her right hand and arm near the right side of her face. Also, her left leg was straight, while her right leg was bent at the knee. The murderers also placed her bent right leg under her left leg, almost kind of in a position, and you can't see me, that's kind of like if you're doing a ballet position. I think it's called a pirouette, where it's the straight leg and then you bend, okay? And then this leg that's bent is tucked under the straight leg. Then, like Libby, those involved in the murder had placed tree branches in a very specific pattern on top of Abby. The pattern looks very similar to an asterisk consisting of 3 tree branches, all joined in the middle. At least one of those tree branches appears to have been cleanly cut by some sort of instrument, such as a saw, rather than being split or broken by a hand or a leg or something like that, indicating that this was a preconceived plan. Then, above Abby's head, there were smaller sticks that had been placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. The amount of blood that would be perhaps expected at this kind of crime scene based upon the location of the injuries of both girls was not visible at all. In addition to the unusual way that the girls were posed, including the stick formations placed on their bodies, another unusual marking was found on a nearby tree. A symbol that looked similar to the letter F appeared approximately 4 feet above the base of the tree. The F was red in color, and later DNA testing showed that the F had been painted on that tree using Libby's blood as the so-called paint. Additional blood spatter was found at the base of that same tree. All of the blood at the base of the tree appears to have been Libby's blood as well. The defense has also provided the court with DNA documentation supporting the fact that Libby's blood was the source of the F that was painted on the tree. The stick configuration on Abby resembles the rune called Hegel. This rune is used to depict the word hail. Therefore, the combination of the Hegel rune found on Abby and the rune that was found on the tree, when combined, would proclaim Hail Odin. The defense team speculates that because of the lack of blood visible in the crime scene photos, especially the lack of blood concerning Abby, that the murderers may have saved the blood to be used in future rituals. Now, this is merely a theory, not supported by any facts currently in possession of the defense, but a theory that would certainly explain the lack of expected blood at the crime scene. The painted F on the tree resembles a rune called Onsu's, which stands for Odin. Again, when paired with the Hegel rune found on Abby, the combination would proclaim Hail Odin. Under Abby's left lower back, a shoe was found. This shoe is believed to be Libby's shoe, and under the shoe, a cell phone was found. The cell phone was later determined to be Libby's phone. According to recent depositions taken of Sheriff Liggett, the famous video of the person that many people called Bridge Guy was found on this very phone. Additionally, allegedly found between the 2 girls buried under the leaves and the dirt was a single bullet. The only photos that the defense has found in the discovery of the bullet is of the bullet still buried in the ground. So you can see why this description is definite nightmare fuel. It is absolutely horrifying to think about a searcher coming across this disturbing scene in the middle of the woods. And I will get back into what Odinism is in just a moment, but I wanted to go over the part of the document that many people believe does point to Richard Allen's innocence. Even though it was very redundant, the defense went through the suspected timeline step by step, all in order to show that it would have been difficult, if not near impossible, for one man to have carried out the murder on his own. The crimes were supposedly carried out within an hour and 15 minutes, and during that time, Richard would have had to march the girls down that steep hill, through very rough terrain, through a freezing cold river that at the time was about 3.5 feet high, continue to the site of the murders, get the girls to take off their clothing, subdue one of the girls so that he could cut the throat of the first one and kill the first one, then cut the throat and kill the second one, then drag Libby to the tree and stage her body, move Abby, redress her, stage her body, find the sticks and place all of the sticks, gather up all of the clothing that he didn't put back on Abby, redressing her in, put them in the river, and leave without ever being seen or heard. They stated that since Abby's body was mostly clean from blood and the clothing on her body was also clean from blood other than around that area of her neck, that it would have been very difficult for one person to have gotten her dressed while keeping her body and clothing free from blood. It was also stated that Abby was wearing 2 bras, Libby's jeans, her own shirt, and Libby's sweatshirt. According to the autopsy, the vein that was cut in Abby's neck was one that would have made her death very slow. So the killer would have had to wait until all of that blood was done draining from her neck in order to get the clothing back on her and keep them clean. They posed the possibility of the killer hanging Abby upside down to get the blood out more quickly. But I think that if the killer did that, then there would have probably been blood on her face, which wasn't mentioned. Regardless, for someone of Richard's size, which was about 5'4", it does seem like it would be difficult for one person to have gone through all of those steps and made sure that neither of the girls were screaming or ran away while he was killing the other. But what do you think? Do you think it's possible for one man to have done all of that by himself? Or do you think that it's more than likely that there were multiple people involved? According to the defense, even though the lead investigator on the case has publicly stated that there was only one killer, in private, he has said that it seems like more than one person would have had to do all of the steps involved given the timeline. In the description, it was also described that one of the branches seemed to have been cut using that tool. Remember, it said it looked like an instrument was used, not that it was broken or split by hand. However, none of the branches were collected from the crime scene until much, much later. Tool marks could have been compared to markings on a branch, and they could have been tested for DNA or fingerprints. The blood on the tree with the supposed letter F was photographed, but it's been argued that the bark or even the whole tree should have been cut down and taken into evidence, but it wasn't.
The other interesting thing about these sticks, they did not collect them when they collected evidence from the crime scene.
Whoa, slow down. Sticks are placed on the bodies of the two victims here, and they're not collected as evidence?
They were not collected as evidence until several weeks later, conceivably when this Odinism stuff started to arise within the investigation, and they went back to try to collect those sticks. Now, the other thing we have an image of is what was depicted on the tree, and it's described in this memorandum as being the letter F, a rune painted in blood.
Blood, right?
That was tested according to the memo. It's Libby's blood, according to the memo.
That's what the defense is saying.
Yes. I have not heard that part of it from my sources, but I was given a rendering of what the blood on the tree or whatever the substance on the tree appeared to be. And
that's what we're looking at right now.
This is more accurate. Several of the investigators told me they thought that it was a perhaps partial handprint of the person who committed the crime, leaned up against the tree, and that's how it was placed there.
All right, let's put it back up. Let's put that back up. This is significant. This is important. Now, the defense is saying this is the letter F.
Yes. Now, we also have a second image where we have placed that rune, the F image, over this. And you can decide for yourself if it looks like the exact same image or not. Again, many investigators thought that it was a handprint or something that was just done during the commission of the crime and not intentionally placed there. But just like the sticks, Vinny, this was not taken as evidence. The tree was not cut down. The bark was not removed. It was left at the scene, photographed, swabbed.
Everything was photographed, though, right? The scene had to be photographed at a minimum. At a minimum.
But you would think,
yeah,
at least the bark, from what I've heard, at least the bark should have been taken, if not that chunk of the tree.
Well, if they're saying it's Libby's blood, then someone would have to have taken a sample of the blood, right?
Yes.
You would think? Okay.
According to the memo, they say the DNA testing shows that it is her blood.
So like I mentioned before, there have been several new names of potential persons of interest that the defense claims has ties to Odinism and who could have been involved in the murders. And I'm sure you might be wondering at this point what Odinism is. Well, News Nation described Odinism as a white supremacist cult focused on the worship of the Norse god Odin. The belief system may also sometimes be referred to as Asatru and is centered around white supremacist beliefs combined with magical elements of neo-paganism. Values in both groups center around the idea of folk tribes and individualism. Wish TV had a professor on to talk about this as well.
The professor I spoke with tells me that Odinism is a pagan-based religion where the followers worship many gods.
For Odinists, this is sort of the religion of their blood.
Dr. Jefferson Calico teaches at University of the Cumberlands in Kentucky. He tells me Odinism is a
racially based form of heathenry or Germanic paganism. These are people who see it as like a white man's religion, you know, a racist form of religion.
It's followers of that religion that Richard Allen's attorneys say killed Abby Williams and Libby German in the woods in Delphi, ritualistically sacrificing them, moving and positioning their bodies, and placing sticks on them in the form of pagan symbols.
Ancient Norse religion, there have been, some of the ancient sources mention human sacrifice.
Dr. Calico says modern-day people wanting to bring back that old way of doing things would be called Reconstructionists.
Every Reconstructionist I've talked to has been pretty explicit in rejecting human sacrifice as something just not appropriate for contemporary people.
There have been side-by-side comparisons of the placement of the girls and the sticks alongside images of runes or Odin symbols, and some people think that the sticks clearly resemble these symbols, while others think that this is a reach, and that the sticks were more than likely just thrown haphazardly in a failed attempt to cover up the girls' bodies. It's important to note that in the document, the defense states that they themselves did not come up with any of these new persons of interest or any of the information at all, and that it was all part of the discovery that was given to them from the prosecution. According to the defense, Abby was dating a boy whose father is a known Odinist member. I'm going to refer to him as BH in this episode. BH made several Facebook posts that eerily resemble the supposed runes found on the girls' bodies, and many people believe that he even closely resembled Bridge Guy, and sounds like him as well. He made a post that supposedly closely resembled the crime scene, even though the crime scene details had not been released to the public yet. Kind of gives you Papa Roger vibes a little bit, doesn't it? He allegedly posted pictures showing unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. The sticks across the females on this post were believed to be symbols or runes. BH also created a creepy painting of a man believed to be Odin. The man was hanging upside down from a tree with his legs posed similar to Abby's at the crime scene. This painting also contained a red F rune at the base of the tree, just like the F rune painted on the tree at the crime scene. On February 17, 2017, 3 days after the girls were found murdered, BH posted a meme which discussed how real friends will help you move dead bodies, and then the friends will keep their mouths shut. This was deleted at some point in time, but still recovered by law enforcement. He's also made taunting videos wearing hats that resembled the hat worn by Bridge Guy.
My last video pissed you off. Well, this one's really going to piss you off. So you don't like my hat? You think I'm the murderer because I'm wearing this hat, right? Well, how about this hat? Does this hat trigger you?
And he was actually found to have been in Delphi often, visiting friends, specifically a friend that I will refer to as PW. BH's ex also allegedly came forward with a story about how BH and PW stopped being friends after they got into a fight in the woods after conducting a Odinistic ritual. Another potential person of interest mentioned in the document, who I will call EF, has ties to BH and PW as well. EF and BH were Facebook friends, and strangely, EF would copy and repost a lot of the things that BH posted. According to EF's sisters, he also admitted to being involved in the murders. He was questioned by police and even asked police if he would be in trouble if his spit was found on the girls. There were other Odinists mentioned in the document, all of whom have connections to each other, and as you can see, this theory does hold a little more weight now, considering all of this new information. Like I said, there are pages and pages going over the possible connections of these alleged Odinist members, and it does seem like it would have been at least something that needed to be heavily looked into by investigators. The defense states that even though most of these members have alibis, they're shady at best. Both BH and EF's ex-girlfriends took and passed polygraphs, stating that the men told them that they were responsible for the murders as well. So, what do you think? Do you think that this could have been a ritual carried out by a cult? Or is the defense making something out of nothing? Apparently, there are several officers who believe this angle as well, but their thoughts have been suppressed to further the narrative of Richard Allen being guilty. In one more piece of the cult Odinist theory, the defense alleges that there were several members of the cult working at the corrections facility where Richard Allen is being held. They said that they personally witnessed guards wearing Odinist patches and were the ones always seen with Richard. They claimed that the men wearing the patches on their uniforms were always within earshot of any of Richard's conversations, and also always monitoring him, which they believe could be the reason that Richard admitted to the murders, when they believe he is actually innocent. They stated that Richard could have been threatened if he did not confess, which may be why his mental health has declined so rapidly and drastically afterward. They believe that they possibly threatened to kill his family, which caused Richard to ask over and over in every meeting with them if his family was alive, if they were okay, and if they were safe. It was like Richard was afraid that someone was going to kill his family, possibly the Odinist cult. The defense also stated that after it came out that they knew about the possible Odin connection, that the guards miraculously stopped wearing those patches.
So when we see this, and then we hear this allegation, which is stunning, a stunning allegation in terms of these guys wearing patches and being like known Odinists, and they're the ones that are guarding this guy. Man, I've never seen anything like it, Vinny. These allegations, if they're going to get fleshed out, are just bombshells. And it's an absolute explanation in my estimation, and it's going to get vetted. Look, I mean, like you said, this is a defense coming with emotion, with some incredibly powerful statements that are going to get vetted at a Frank's hearing. And if it turns out to be true, this case is absolutely turned upon its head, because the biggest and strongest evidence that they have right now are those confessions.
Right. Yeah. Barbara, you were out there. And I mean, did you bump into any Odinites?
Not that I'm aware of, but
Was it a thing?
I've heard of different groups that perhaps have some off-center beliefs that operate in the area. I've certainly heard that in connection with this case before.
In the next part of the document, the defense claims that the lead investigator lied, left out, and even falsified pertinent information in order to get the judge to sign off on that search warrant. They believe the timeline of when Richard Allen left the park wouldn't match up to when the murders took place, and that the witnesses claimed to have seen a man in completely different clothing than what Richard and Bridge Guy were wearing. They believe that if all of the witnesses' statements, the Odinist information, and correct timeline were included in the probable cause affidavit, then the warrant would have never been signed, and that there never would have been a search of Richard Allen's home or vehicles. All of this and so much more have now caused people who were sure of Richard's guilt to reconsider, and it's made many people think that the investigators on this case have not been honest or transparent with the public, because they knew that if all of this information had gotten out, then people could have put two and two together about a possible cult connection. So that is a summary of the documents that were just released last week. It would have taken hours to go over each page, but if you are invested in this case, I encourage you to read the document for yourself. It's clear that the defense has done their homework, in my opinion, but we do need to remember, too, this is from Richard's defense. It is their job to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, and some people even believe that this could have been an attempt to taint the possible jury pool. It's going to be extremely difficult to find a jury who has no knowledge of this case anyway, and some people think that the defense knew this and wanted to put some more doubt out there into the public to make the trial more fair for their client. In the document, the defense said that one of the saddest parts about all of this new information is that if the prosecution knew about all of this years ago but didn't bring it up, it's possible that Richard could have been sitting in jail all this time for no reason. If the defense had gotten all of this information 2 or even 3 years ago, maybe they could have used it to get Richard out of jail sooner. It's clear that he is suffering in jail, and I think all of us need to remember that our justice system is based on the theory of innocent until proven guilty. And many people believe that the way Richard is being treated is more like guilty until proven innocent. So according to Fox 59, In an article that they posted on September 25th, late on Monday afternoon, Carroll County Prosecutor Nicholas McClelland has responded to Richard Allen's defense team's 136-page memo, which not only asked for evidence collected during the search warrant to be thrown out, but laid out an alternative theory that linked the Delphi murders to a cult which ritualistically sacrificed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. According to Fox 59, McClelland fired back in these new court filings by calling the alternative theory a fanciful defense for social media to devour, saying that it isn't supported by evidence. The state tore into the defense's entire 136-page memo, calling the large filing colorful, dramatic, and highly unprofessional. Amongst the defense attorney's targets was a search warrant served by investigators on Richard Allen's home in October of 2022. The defense had accused Sheriff Tony Liggett of lying about key information in order to have the search warrant signed by a judge. So the state responded to this by saying that he did not intentionally or recklessly omit evidence or lie about evidence in the probable cause affidavit, which was filed with the court in order to gain the search warrant. The prosecutor defended the search warrant by stating that all relevant information to justify a search of Allen's home came from interviews with Richard Allen himself, along with interviews with his wife. Richard Allen admitted on his own accord of being on the trails the day that Abby and Libby were killed, which the prosecution again reinstated. Allen also described the clothing that he was wearing to investigators, clothing that prosecutors say matched the suspect that was captured on Libby German's cell phone. Investigators also knew a firearm may have been involved in the murder of the girls due to that unspent .40 caliber round being found between Abby and Libby's body. Richard Allen told investigators he owned a gun of the same caliber. And now, according to Fox 59, and I'm going to read this, there's a quote which says, "Under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, the evidence needed to obtain a search warrant need not rise to the statute of facts necessary to obtain conviction. The circumstances alleged in the affidavit need only lead person of reasonable caution to believe that crime has been committed." The state also said investigators also worried that if a search of Allen's home was not conducted immediately, there was a risk that Richard Allen would destroy any potential evidence, saying the investigators believed through their training and experience that there was a real chance that the defendant would destroy evidence once he knew that he was a suspect in the crime. Now, moving over into the cameras in the courtroom and the state responding to that. The prosecutor has shared serious concerns with that motion to allow broadcast cameras in the courtroom for the Delphi murders. Again, Fox 59 News reporting that the Carroll County prosecutor has filed a motion opposing a request to broadcast the trial for Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen, citing serious concerns in this motion. Now, as we talked about earlier, defense attorneys representing Richard Allen had filed a motion on September 13th to allow broadcast cameras in the courtrooms, citing Rule 217 of the Indiana Code of Judicial Conduct, which regulates broadcasting, televising, recording, and photographs in courtrooms. The defense referenced an amendment to the rule that would have allowed the judge to allow the broadcasting of the legal process in their courtroom at their own discretion. This amendment took effect in May, and it would allow broadcasting as long as the means of recordings wouldn't distract participants or affect the dignity of the proceedings. So according to the documents filed in Carroll Circuit Court today on Monday, the state said that the broadcasting of pretrial and trial proceedings could create the same concerns, if not more, given that an attorney is immune from libel proceedings for statements made in open court. According to the filings, McClelland had also shared its concerns with the inflammatory language of the defense counsel, stating, and I quote, that defense counsel continues to use inflammatory language in pleadings, including statements that are simply not true, and there is no reason to think that they will not continue to use this type of language in court designed as sound bites for recording on the national stage. The response also mentioned the problems that could potentially arise from the defense's change of venue, as the defense cited prejudicial publicity in that request. The state said similar problems may also come from the public broadcasting of pretrial hearings. In a direct quote from Fox 59, it reads, that the defense has already moved for change of venue, citing prejudicial publicity, and if the court were to allow broadcasting of pretrial hearings, that publicity would be persuasive, and, as the defendant notes, will be without boundaries given the worldwide interest in the proceedings. The national interest in these court proceedings could also cause distractions for the court if broadcasting were to be permitted. It also went on to refer to the complex nature of the case, the large number of media outlets, and the interest that would generate, the obligation to protect the identities of the jurors, and the sensitive content that will be presented. The prosecutor also expressed concern for the enhanced platform members of the defense would have if the request to broadcast, if approved, could provide, saying that the defense has already expressed its intent to attack not only the evidence, but the credibility of those who investigated the case, which will allow the defense team to grandstand on camera about the imagined bad motives of the state actors. The response also references a concern with cameras being allowed in the courtroom due to this decision never previously being allowed in Carroll County Circuit Court. The state also referenced the magnitude of the case, sharing the concern that the Delphi court process could be the pilot case in which cameras are allowed to record proceedings, saying that allowing cameras in such highly publicized and sensationalized cases runs the risks of creating circus atmosphere both in person and online, where 15-second clips taken out of context can race around the world in seconds, giving an inaccurate impression of the actual evidence and conduct of court proceedings. As a reminder, the jury trial is scheduled for January 8, 2024 at 9 a.m. As it stands, Richard Allen is still charged with 2 counts of murder in the case of the February 2017 murders of Libby German and Abby Williams. So I'm curious what you think about these updates, because it should also be mentioned that the document in itself has been heavily scrutinized by the online community, with people saying that it sounds more like the plot of a Stephen King novel than an actual legal document. There was sarcasm, casual language, and some think that it was written in a way to sensationalize the facts. However, I will say that sometimes documents like this are difficult to understand due to the legal jargon, but this one was pretty easy to comprehend. Again, I don't think this document necessarily proves that Richard Allen is innocent because it is through the lens of the defense, and I'm sure that the prosecution has a lot of evidence of their own that won't be released until the trial. However, I do think that this has sparked an important conversation, and maybe there is something else going on here that is far more disturbing than one man on a bridge.
We talked to a retired FBI agent about the defense's theory. Here's what he had to say.
It certainly was an interesting read, and I assume, these are attorneys. They've done their homework, they've done their own investigations, and so you have no reason to doubt, what they put in there.
In the filing, Allen's attorneys argue someone else committed the gruesome crime. Defense attorney Bob Mata agrees.
Where's the case against Richard Allen? What's his motive? I mean, I haven't heard any of that with Richard Allen. Right now, they're hanging their hat on the case that for some reason, because typically people don't confess on jail calls that they know are recorded. Typically, that's not a thing that typically happens. So, the fact that that is the strongest piece of evidence that they have is interesting. It's not a strong case against the guy forensically. They have nothing. And the other big thing that comes out of that, which was like a little kernel in there, is that they're saying, look, there is no DNA that is putting Richard Allen at that crime scene. And more importantly than the DNA, because I had heard that there was no DNA that they recovered from that scene, is that they didn't find any evidence whatsoever on any of his devices.
What do you make of this? You read it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating narrative, right? Where they lay out all the possible reasons why it could be this cult and all the rituals and the way that the bodies were found, etc. But this is really more the kind of argument you hear at trial when a defendant is saying, why didn't they investigate this? Or why didn't they investigate that? What it doesn't address is the evidence against him. Right? They're talking about what other evidence that they might have found, they could have found, they should have focused on, and they don't really address a lot the evidence against him. And as you heard it there in the piece, which is this bullet, the fact that he's placing himself at the scene, and the confessions.
So they're not likely to succeed?
Not likely is a legal matter. So the key legal argument here is the search warrant should have been invalid because there were things that were wrong. They're saying that the investigators lied. But you can't just throw out everything you find in a search warrant because there were mistakes made, right? The color of the jacket, was it mud versus blood, etc. You have to show that there was some level of intentional conduct by the investigators to try to fool the court. That's a very high standard.
And there are some horrifying details in this document that we did not know about before. But how does this all play into the case against Allen?
Yeah, so the first thing he's going to have to do at a trial is address the evidence against him. If he can somehow pose doubt about that, then some of this other stuff becomes potentially interesting. But think about it. In so many high-profile cases, we have seen theories, right, that have been presented about, drug dealers who actually did it, about Satanists who actually did it, etc. You got to start from the point of what's the evidence against my client. If you can undermine that evidence, then I think a jury could be receptive to hearing other possible theories. But that's the first thing you got to deal with.
And I want to know, why do you think that the possible cult component wasn't looked into further until now? Do you think it's possible that Richard Allen is innocent, or maybe that he had help and was a part of this cult? I'm sure that there will be a response from the state about the claims in this document, and I will definitely keep you updated on any more information that comes out about it in this case. At the end of the day, all any of us want is justice for Abby and Libby, and we want that to come from putting away the right person.
We must keep our resolve for Libby and Abby, for this community, and frankly, to ensure that good trumps evil. And it will.
Also, I am going to be doing a deep dive on a bunch of cults in the very, very near future. Actually, I haven't announced it formally yet, but it is coming for the month of October, so stay tuned for details on that. So if you do want a deep dive on this cult, just in general, as its own, not even having any ties to these murders, let me know in the comments below and I will add that to the list. Because we've got about 5 on the docket that we're going to cover and do a deep dive on that are very interesting, to say the least. It's no secret, I have been saying forever, cults fascinate me on an unbelievable level. The brainwashing, the interest, all of it, it just is very fascinating to me. Also, though, it spooks me out a lot. Cults really freak me out. They really creep me out. I think that's why I am so fascinated with them, and I'm guessing that's why a lot of you guys are fascinated with them too, because it's almost as though you're trying to get into the psyche of these people, their rituals. It's scary, it's eerie, but it's very fascinating. So some of these deep dives coming up are going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. But if you want me to do a deep dive on this cult as well, again, aside from the Delphi murders, let me know in the comment section below and I will add it to the list. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I am going to keep you updated on this case because I am on it like glue. So make sure hit that subscribe button really quick so that you don't miss any more updates in this case. And as a reminder, if you want to get fully caught up and do a full deep dive on this case, I'm going to link that playlist and those videos in the description. All right, guys, thanks again. And until the next case, stay safe. Bye.